The crystalline ships of the Maraxian Empire descended through Earth's atmosphere like shards of frozen starlight. Their arrival silenced the world's chaos, replacing it with a different kind of tension. Humanity's first contact wasn't bearing gifts or promises of enlightenment. It came with a challenge. Amanda Grip Reynolds stood at the United Earth Defense Headquarters, watching the main display as the alien vessels arranged themselves in a perfect hexagonal pattern above New Geneva. Her calloused hands, marked by years of climbing and combat training, clenched involuntarily. She hadn't expected the lottery to choose her, but here she was, Earth's unwitting champion. Their biomechanical enhancement program has been running for 50,000 years, General Harrison said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Every single one of them is stronger than our strongest machines, and now they want to test us, like they've tested thousands of other species. The briefing room's holographic display shifted, showing footage from other worlds. Beings of all shapes and sizes attempting impossible physical tasks, failing. Their civilizations subsequently classified as subservient species. The Maraxian Empire's methodology was brutally simple: prove your physical worth or accept your place in their hierarchy. Why me? Amanda asked, though she already knew the answer. The lottery hadn't been random at all. Because you're the best we got, Harrison replied, bringing up her service record. Special Forces combat instructor, professional rock climber, holder of 17 world records in grip strength and fine motor control. But more importantly, you understand how to lose strategically. The doors slid open, and a Maraxian diplomat entered. Their biomechanical body gleamed under the artificial light, every movement accompanied by the whisper of synthetic muscles and crystalline joints. Ambassador Zix 891 stood 3 meters tall, their frame an elegant fusion of biological precision and mechanical perfection. The human representative, Zix 891 said, their translator converting complex harmonics into English. We expected your species to choose a male, given their superior physical capabilities. The contempt in their voice required no translation. Amanda smiled, noting how the ambassador's movements, while powerful, followed strict patterns. Every gesture was calculated, efficient, and utterly predictable. We let chance decide. She lied smoothly. It seemed the fairest way. Fairness is irrelevant. Excellence is absolute. The ambassador's optical sensors focused on her hands. Your species still bears the marks of evolutionary struggle. How primitive. We bear many marks, Amanda replied, keeping her voice level. Each tells a story of survival. The ambassador's response was to activate a hovering display, showing the first challenge, a series of physical trials that would make Olympic athletes weep. You have 3 planetary rotations to prepare. The trials begin with the test of measured force, followed by... Actually, Amanda interrupted, letting a hint of nervousness enter her voice. I'd like to start immediately, if that's acceptable. The ambassador's mechanical parts whirred in what might have been surprise. You wish to attempt the trials without preparation. This is most irregular. Consider it a human peculiarity. We sometimes prefer to face our challenges head-on. General Harrison shot her a warning look, but Amanda kept her eyes on the ambassador. She had spotted something in their movements, a limitation that nobody else seemed to notice. The Maraxians' perfect bodies had a fatal flaw, and she needed more time to confirm her theory. Very well, Zix 891 said after a moment of computational silence. Your species' eagerness to prove its inadequacy is noted. The trials will commence in 1 hour. As the ambassador left, their movements as precise as a computer's calculations, Harrison turned to Amanda. That wasn't the plan. Plans change, General, she replied, watching the Maraxians' retreating form. And I think I just spotted their biggest weakness. They'd spent 50,000 years perfecting their bodies, but they've lost something essential along the way. And what's that? Amanda flexed her hands, feeling the natural interplay of muscle, tendon, and bone. Millions of years of evolution crafting the perfect tool. the ability to improvise. The secure briefing room beneath New Geneva hummed with quantum processors as Amanda scrolled through the classified Meraxian archives. Their ship's data cores had been surprisingly easy to access, not because Earth's cyber teams were particularly skilled, but because the Meraxians never expected primitive species to attempt hacking their perfect systems. "Stop on that file," Dr. Marcus Rodriguez said, his cybernetics division having spent the last 6 hours decoding the alien data. "Look at the pattern in their conquest history." The holographic display showed thousands of worlds, each marked with a simple designation: Subservient Species Type 1 through Type 7. The classifications were cold, methodical, and utterly devoid of empathy. "They've been doing this for 10,000 years, Amanda muttered, her fingers tracing patterns in the air as she connected the dots. "Each species they encounter, they subject to the same trials. But look at the success rate. It's 0. No species has ever passed." Rodriguez nodded, his expression grim. "Because the trials aren't designed to be passed. They're designed to justify their hierarchy. But we found something they didn't mean to show us." The display shifted, revealing detailed biomechanical schematics of Meraxian enhancement. Their bodies were marvels of engineering. Synthetic muscles capable of lifting tons, reflexes faster than computer processors, bones reinforced with exotic materials. But as Amanda studied the neural interface diagrams, she spotted the flaw. "Their enhancement process," she said, leaning forward. "It's replaced their motor cortex with quantum processors. They've traded natural neural plasticity for raw computing power." "Exactly." Rodriguez brought up comparison scans. "A human brain can create new neural pathways in minutes, adapting to new situations instantly. The Meraxians, they're locked into pre-programmed movement patterns. Incredibly powerful, perfectly executed, but completely predictable," Amanda finished, remembering the ambassador's mechanically precise gestures. The door slid open, and General Harrison entered with a younger Meraxian in tow. The alien's biomechanical frame was sleeker than the others, less adorned with the ceremonial modifications that marked their elite. "Ms. Reynolds," Harrison said, "meet Science Observer Crix 389. They've requested to study your primitive biological systems during the trials." Amanda caught the slight emphasis on primitive and understood. This was an opportunity. "Of course," she said, carefully maintaining a facade of nervous excitement. "I'd be honored to be studied by such an advanced being." Crix 389's optical sensors whirred as they focused on her hands. "Your species' reliance on unaugmented biology is fascinating. Your movements appear chaotic, inefficient, yet—" They paused, their processors seemingly struggling with a concept. "Yet they achieve results our simulations cannot predict." "That's just human weakness," Amanda said, flexing her fingers in a deliberately unstructured pattern. "We never know exactly how we'll perform until we try." The young Meraxian sensors flickered, their equivalent of rapid blinking. "Uncertainty is a feature, not a flaw." "Intriguing. Our enhancement process eliminated such inefficiencies generations ago." "And how do your people feel about that?" Amanda asked, watching closely. Something changed in Crix 389's posture, a barely perceptible shift that their perfect bodies shouldn't have allowed. "The question is irrelevant. The path of enhancement is absolute." But Amanda had seen it, a glimpse of doubt in the machine. "Of course," she said smoothly. "I look forward to demonstrating our primitive capabilities tomorrow." After the Meraxian left, Harrison turned to her. "Well, their younger generation isn't as convinced of their superiority as they want us to believe," Amanda said, turning back to the neural schematics. "And I think I know how to use that. We need to access their historical records of the enhancement process, not the sanitized version they show other species, but the real data." "Already on it," Rodriguez said, his fingers dancing across the quantum interface. "But Amanda, be careful. If they realize we're accessing these files." She nodded, studying the endless list of subjugated species, Each one had tried to match Meraxian strength with strength. Each one had failed. "Don't worry," she said, a plan already forming. "Tomorrow, I'm going to fail too, just not in the way they expect." The preliminary trial chamber gleamed with an otherworldly light, its crystalline walls refracting the morning sun into rainbow patterns across the assembled crowd. Hundreds of alien diplomats watched from hovering platforms, their species representing a fraction of those the Meraxians had already conquered. Amanda stood before the first challenge, a simple-looking metallic sphere suspended in a gravity field. Ambassador Zix 891's voice echoed through the chamber. "The sphere of measured response requires precise control. Apply exactly 15,000 newtons of force. No more, no less. A task any Meraxian child could perform." She stepped forward, bare feet silent on the polished floor. Her combat fatigues had been replaced with a simple gray jumpsuit, making her look even more primitive beside the biomechanical splendor of their hosts, just as planned. "Whenever you're ready, human," the ambassador said, mechanical condescension dripping from each word. Amanda reached for the sphere, letting her hand tremble slightly. She'd spent the night studying their archived footage, watching how other species approached this test. All had failed, but not because it was impossible. They'd failed because they tried to think like Meraxians. Her fingers wrapped around the sphere. The gravity field hummed, measuring her grip strength. She squeezed, purposefully overshooting the mark by 2,000 newtons. "Failure," Zix 891 announced. "As expected. Would you like to?" Again, Amanda interrupted, flexing her fingers. "Please." The ambassador's optical sensors whirred. "Very well." Her second attempt fell short by a similar margin. The third came closer but still failed. With each try, she noted how the Meraxians watched her, their sensors recording every muscle movement, every micro-adjustment. They were studying her, just as she was studying them. From her elevated observation pod, Dr. Rodriguez's voice whispered through her neural comlink. "They're running prediction algorithms on your performance, complex ones. They're trying to understand why your force application isn't consistent." Perfect. On her sixth attempt, Amanda changed her grip slightly. The sphere's reading fluctuated, dancing just under the required force. She held it there, muscles trembling with apparent effort, before letting go. "Fascinating," Crix 389 said from their observation post. "The human's neural patterns show no standardized response curve. Each attempt produces entirely new muscle activation sequences." "Inefficient," another Meraxian scientist commented. "Their biological limitation makes precise force control impossible." Amanda hid her smile. They were seeing exactly what she wanted them to see. A capable but ultimately inferior species, struggling to match their mechanical precision. They didn't realize that maintaining inconsistency required more control than hitting the exact mark. "The next challenge," Zix 891 announced, clearly bored with her continued failure. A series of crystalline pillars rose from the floor, each connected by beams of pure energy. Navigate the path of precision. Touch any beam, and the trial ends. The obstacle course was beautiful in its complexity. Energy beams crisscrossed at seemingly random angles, creating a three-dimensional maze that required perfect spatial awareness to navigate. Amanda studied the pattern, noting how it mimicked the Meraxians' own movement protocols. They always chose the most efficient path, the one requiring the least energy expenditure. Their enhanced bodies wouldn't allow anything else. She began her run, deliberately choosing an awkward route. Her movements were fluid but seemingly unplanned, each step looking more lucky than calculated. She scraped close to several beams, drawing gasps from the audience, before finally reaching the end with seconds to spare. "Unorthodox," Zix 891 noted. "Your species relies heavily on chance." "We rely on adaptability," Amanda replied, letting exhaustion show in her voice. "Each challenge is unique. We can't pre-program our responses." The ambassador's dismissive gesture was exactly what she'd anticipated. A primitive approach, but you have qualified for the next round, if barely. Tomorrow's trials will not be so forgiving. As Amanda left the chamber, she caught Crix 389 studying her intently. The young Miraxian sensors were running at full capacity, trying to decode her seemingly chaotic performance. Rodriguez, she subvocalized into her comlink. "Tell me they got what we needed." "Every second," he replied. "Their predictive algorithms are now calibrated to expect human inconsistency. They won't see the truth until it's too late." Amanda stretched her fingers, feeling the power she'd carefully hidden. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, they'd learn that chaos and precision weren't mutually exclusive. The observation chamber aboard the Miraxian vessel hummed with quantum machinery as Crix 389 ran their 17th scan of Amanda's nervous system. Their enhanced sensors probed every nerve cluster, every muscle fiber, mapping the intricate dance of organic electricity through her body. "Your species' neural architecture defies our models," they said, mechanical limbs adjusting the scanning field. "Each movement generates patterns we cannot predict. It should not be possible." Amanda sat perfectly still on the examination platform, watching the young scientist's movements. Unlike the older Miraxians, Crix 389's gestures occasionally deviated from standard protocols, microscopic variations that suggested an internal struggle. "Why did your people choose to enhance themselves?" she asked, noting how the question made their servos stutter momentarily. "The great enhancement began during the resource wars," Crix 389 replied, their voice modulator shifting to a lower frequency. "Our original forms were inefficient, weak. The biomechanical augmentation program saved our species from extinction." "At what cost?" The scanner switched off abruptly. Crix 389's optical sensors focused on their own hands, perfect mechanisms of synthetic muscle and crystalline bone. "The question is inappropriate. The path of enhancement is absolute." "You keep saying that," Amanda observed, "like you're trying to convince yourself." Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the software of Crix 389's cooling systems. Then, in a movement that violated every Miraxian protocol, they sat down beside her. "There are discussions among the younger generation," they said, voice barely above a whisper. "Questions about what we lost. The old records show our ancestors could dance, could create art with their hands, could feel the texture of rain on their skin. We traded these things for power and precision." Amanda flexed her fingers, drawing Crix 389's attention. "Watch closely," she said, picking up a small crystal from the examination table. Her fingers danced over its surface, each movement unique, unpredictable, yet perfectly controlled. "Impossible," Crix 389 breathed. "Your force application varies with each microsecond, yet achieves the same result. Our enhancement protocols require standardized movement patterns for precision tasks." "That's because you're thinking of precision wrong," Amanda explained. "True precision isn't about perfect repetition. It's about perfect adaptation. Each moment, each movement responds to changing conditions." The doors slid open, and Ambassador Zix 891 entered. Crix 389 immediately stood, their posture snapping back to regulation perfection. "The human's examination should have concluded 6 minutes ago," the ambassador stated. "Your efficiency ratings will reflect this deviation." Science Observer. "My apologies, Ambassador. The subject's biological systems required additional analysis." Amanda noticed how Crix 389's vocal patterns had shifted, becoming more mechanically precise. The brief glimpse of curiosity and doubt vanished behind their programmed facade. "Tomorrow's trials will prove definitively that biological systems are obsolete," Zix 891 declared. "The human's limited success thus far is merely statistical variance." As Amanda was escorted out, she caught Crick's 389's subtle head tilt, a gesture that wouldn't appear in any Miraxian movement protocol. A gesture of question, of doubt, of possibility. Back in her quarters, she contacted Dr. Rodriguez through their secure channel. "Did you get what we needed?" he asked. Amanda smiled, remembering Crick's 389's fascination with human unpredictability. "More than we needed. Their younger generation is already questioning the enhancement path. When we reveal the truth about human capabilities, it could shatter their entire social order." Rodriguez finished. "But tomorrow's trials will be exactly what they expect," Amanda interrupted. "Until they're not. Their predictive algorithms are calibrated to my apparent limitations now. They won't see what's coming until it's too late." She looked out the window at the crystalline spires of the Miraxian ship, remembering Crick's 389's words about rain on skin. Tomorrow, she would show them that they hadn't evolved beyond their original form. They had devolved, trading true adaptability for the illusion of perfection. And perhaps in showing them their weakness, she would help them rediscover their strength. The fifth trial chamber dwarfed all previous venues, its crystalline ceiling stretching hundreds of meters overhead. Representatives from 50 subjugated species watched from suspended platforms, their whispers echoing through the vast space. Today's challenge: the Pillars of Ascending Force. A simple test of progressive strength, Ambassador Zix 891 announced, their voice resonating through the chamber. Each pillar requires exponentially more force to activate. The final pillar demands strength that only enhanced beings can achieve. Amanda studied the 20 crystalline columns rising from the floor. Each pillar glowed with a different intensity, marking the required force threshold. The first few would be easy. The last ones, impossible for any unaugmented human. Or so they thought. "Begin when ready," the ambassador commanded, obvious boredom in their synthetic voice. She approached the first pillar, aware of Crick's 389 sensors tracking her every movement. The young scientist had positioned themselves closer to the human observation area than protocol dictated. Perfect. The first 5 pillars activated easily under her touch. Standard human strength, nothing remarkable. The 6th through 10th required more effort, drawing measured grunts and signs of strain. The watching aliens muttered among themselves, already calculating where she would fail. At the 15th pillar, Amanda faltered deliberately. Her hand pressed against the crystal surface, muscles trembling with apparent exhaustion. The pillar remained dark. As expected, Zix 891 declared, "The human has reached their biological limit." But Amanda didn't step back. Instead, she shifted her grip, her fingers finding microscopic imperfections in the seemingly perfect surface. The watching crowd leaned forward as the pillar's glow flickered. "Impossible," one of the Miraxian observers stated. "Their muscle mass cannot generate sufficient force." The pillar blazed to life. Whispers erupted among the alien observers. Some had already witnessed dozens of species attempt these trials, but none had ever activated the 15th pillar without enhancement. Amanda moved to the 16th pillar, her movements now drawing the full attention of every sensor in the room. She pressed her palm against its surface, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal began to sing. The sound built slowly, a harmonic resonance that shouldn't have been possible. Amanda's fingers danced across the surface, finding frequencies that the Miraxians' perfect sensors had never detected. The pillar's glow pulsed in sync with her movements. "Stop," Ambassador Zix 891 commanded. "This is not the approved methodology." But it was too late. The 16th pillar blazed with light, and the whispers turned to open discussions. Amanda caught fragments of alien languages being hurriedly translated. Organic adaptation. Unprecedented control. Perhaps the enhancement path. She stepped back from the pillars, her work done for now. She had demonstrated enough strength to unsettle their assumptions, but not enough to reveal her full capabilities. The seeds of doubt were planted. An interesting display of primitive techniques, the ambassador announced, their vocal synthesizer struggling to maintain its usual tone of superiority. But ultimately meaningless. The final pillars remain unactivated, proving the superiority of enhancement. Of course, Amanda replied, letting exhaustion show in her voice. Your power is beyond our limited capabilities. But she noticed how Crix 389 studied the activated pillars, their sensors detecting the subtle resonance patterns she had left behind. The young scientist's posture had shifted, displaying a degree of uncertainty that would have been impossible in their perfectly calibrated bodies. As Amanda left the chamber, Dr. Rodriguez's voice whispered through her neural link. They've called an emergency council meeting. The younger Miraxians are demanding access to pre-enhancement historical records. Good, Amanda replied softly. Have they announced tomorrow's final trial yet? Yes, they're calling it the Labyrinth of Ultimate Control. But Amanda, the energy readings we're detecting, they're planning something desperate. She smiled, flexing her fingers where no one could see. They should be desperate. Tomorrow, they'll learn that true control isn't about power. It's about understanding your own limits, and then choosing to break them. The Labyrinth of Ultimate Control dominated the central chamber of the Miraxian flagship, its crystalline structure spiraling up into darkness. Thousands of energy threads wove through its framework, each one humming with enough power to vaporize organic matter on contact. Our greatest achievement in testing enhancement superiority, Ambassador Zix 891 declared to the assembled galactic delegation. No unaugmented species has ever survived more than 30 seconds within its matrix. Amanda stood at the entry point, studying the complex weave of deadly energy. The patterns weren't random. They pulsed with mathematical precision, following the same protocols that governed Miraxian movement. Their pride had made them predictable. The objective is simple, the ambassador continued. Navigate to the center, retrieve the resonance core, and return. The energy threads will shift constantly, requiring perfect calculated movement to avoid contact. Crix 389 approached, their steps slightly out of sync with standard protocol. I must attach the monitoring sensors, they said, fingers brushing Amanda's arm with unusual gentleness. 4. Scientific documentation. As they work, they whispered, barely audible. The patterns. They're based on our original neural architecture, before the Great Enhancement. None of us can replicate those movements anymore. Amanda nodded slightly, understanding. The Miraxians had built their ultimate test around the very thing they'd sacrificed, natural neural plasticity. Their enhanced bodies, for all their power, couldn't match the fluid adaptability they'd evolved with. Remember, Zix 891 announced, any contact with the energy matrix means immediate disqualification. Your primitive nervous system will have to. Ambassador. A young Miraxian interrupted, breaking multiple protocols. The human's previous performance suggests we should adjust the power levels for safety. Denied. Zix 891 replied sharply. The trial parameters are absolute. Let their failure be absolute as well. Amanda stepped onto the entry platform, rolling her shoulders. Above her, the energy threads danced like liquid lightning, their deadly beauty masking the mathematical patterns beneath. She had studied the archived footage of previous attempts. Each species tried to calculate safe paths, thinking like machines. Each had failed. Beginning trial sequence, the ambassador declared, may your species learn its proper place in the galactic order. The platform rose, bringing Amanda to the first junction of energy threads. Up close, she could see the microscopic fluctuations in each beam. Perfect fractals following ancient neural patterns. She closed her eyes, feeling the heat on her skin, letting her body remember movements older than civilization. What is she doing? One of the Miraxian observers demanded. The human cannot calculate proper trajectories without visual input. But Amanda was through the first layer before they finished speaking. Her movements weren't calculated. They flowed, each motion leading naturally to the next. The energy threads sang around her, their frequencies matching the rhythm of her dance through their deadly matrix. Impossible, Zix 891 stated, their vocal synthesizer glitching. Their reaction time cannot. She was already halfway to the core, moving faster than any previous challenger. Her fingers traced paths between threads that the Miraxians' sensors insisted were too close to navigate. Where others saw walls of lethal energy, she found spaces that existed for microseconds, windows of possibility that only natural neural plasticity could exploit. From the observation deck, Dr. Rodriguez's voice whispered through her neural link. "They're scanning you with everything they've got. The younger Miraxians are. Amanda, I think some of them are crying. Actually crying through their mechanical bodies." She reached the resonance core, her hands dancing around the protective field that housed it. The final security measure required 16 precise manipulations within a quarter second, impossible for both organic and enhanced beings, according to Miraxian calculations. Amanda smiled, remembering Crick's 389's words about their ancestors. Then she began to move, her fingers flowing through positions that hadn't been seen in the galaxy since before the Great Enhancement. Tomorrow, she would show them the true meaning of impossible. But today, she would simply show them what they had lost, and what humanity had kept precious across the millennia of evolution. The resonance core pulsed in Amanda's hands as she stood at the heart of the labyrinth, its crystalline structure synchronizing with her heartbeat. Around her, the lethal energy threads wove an ever-shifting web of light, each pattern more complex than the last. This was the moment no challenger had ever reached, the true test hidden within the impossible game. Impossible. Ambassador Zix 891's voice echoed through the chamber. The core's quantum lock requires precisely calculated force application across multiple dimensional planes. Even our enhanced bodies require complete focus to. The core chimed, a perfect note that silenced the ambassador mid-sentence. Amanda's fingers danced across its surface, finding harmonics that the Miraxians had forgotten existed. Each touch sent ripples through the energy matrix, creating patterns that shouldn't have been possible according to their mathematical models. The humans' neural patterns, Crick's 389 announced, their voice trembling with what could only be described as awe. They're matching the core's original design parameters, the ones from before the Great Enhancement. The gathered audience watched in stunned silence as Amanda began her return journey. But this time, she didn't simply navigate the energy threads, she conducted them. Her movements transformed the deadly matrix into an instrument, each step creating harmonies that hadn't been heard in the galaxy for 50,000 years. "Stop this," Zix 891 commanded. "This violation of protocol cannot be." "Protocol," Amanda called out, her voice carrying over the crystalline symphony she was creating. "Your ancestors built this test as a reminder, didn't they? A reminder of what you lost when you chose power over adaptability." She spun through a particularly complex section of the matrix, her fingers trailing patterns of light that made several younger Miraxians step forward, their optical sensors recording every movement with desperate intensity. "The core responds to living touch," she continued, orchestrating her way through the labyrinth. "Not calculated force, not programmed precision, but the natural variability of organic life. You didn't build this as a test of strength. You built it as a memorial to your own humanity." The core's resonance grew stronger, harmonizing with the energy threads around her. The entire chamber had become an instrument, playing a melody of flesh and light that spoke to something deeper than enhancement, older than empire. "Biological systems are obsolete," Zix 891 insisted, but their voice modulator cracked with uncertainty. "The path of enhancement is a path," Amanda interrupted, reaching the outer layer of the matrix. "Not the only path. Your ancestors knew this. They left you this puzzle, this impossible game, hoping that someday you'd remember what you traded away." With a final flourish, she stepped onto the exit platform, the resonance core singing in her hands. The chamber fell silent, the energy threads settling into patterns that mimicked the neural pathways of organic brains. "How?" one of the elder Miraxians demanded. "Our sensors indicate you never exceeded normal human strength levels. By every measurement, this should have been impossible." Amanda held up her hand, letting them all see the calluses, the slight tremors, the imperfect beauty of natural flesh. Because true mastery isn't about perfect control. It's about perfect adaptation. Each movement I made was unique, each touch slightly different from the last. Your enhanced bodies can't replicate this because you designed them not to. You chose consistency over creativity, power over possibility. Crix 389 stepped forward, their mechanical form moving with subtle variations that showed they'd already begun to remember. The legends of our ancestors. They speak of dancing, of art, of touching the world with hands that could feel its pulse. We thought those stories were primitive fantasies, but they were memories. Amanda finished softly. Memories encoded into this very test, waiting for someone to show you what you've forgotten. The resonance core's glow pulsed one final time, projecting images of ancient Miraxians dancing, creating, living with the same fluid grace that Amanda had just demonstrated. The younger generation moved closer, their optical sensors wide with wonder, while the elders stood frozen in poses of perfect, obsolete precision. In that moment, as organic beauty shattered mechanical perfection, the true victory wasn't over the Miraxian Empire. It was for them, for the future they'd lost and might now reclaim. The great halls of the Miraxian flagship echoed with sounds that hadn't been heard in 50 millennia. Disagreement, debate, and most shockingly of all, laughter. 3 days had passed since Amanda's demonstration in the labyrinth, and the Empire was transforming faster than anyone had predicted. "The Enhancement Council has collapsed," Dr. Rodriguez reported, his hologram flickering in Amanda's quarters. 17 of the 23 council members have resigned, including 6 who have already requested permission to study human neural architecture. Amanda watched through her window as groups of young Miraxians attempted to replicate her movements, their mechanical bodies struggling against generations of programming. Some had already begun removing their non-essential enhancements, seeking to rediscover their original range of motion. "And the ambassador?" she asked. Zix 891 barricaded themselves in the protocol chamber with the last hardcore enhancement loyalists. "They're demanding the trial results be invalidated, claiming you used illegal biological advantages." She couldn't help but smile at the irony. "How's that going for them?" "About as well as you'd expect. Crix 389 is leading the Reformation movement. They're calling it the return to motion. Half the Empire's youth are already experimenting with partial enhancement reversal." The door chimed, and Crix 389 entered. Their formal ceremonial plating was gone, replaced with a simpler exoskeleton that allowed for more natural movement. "The Galactic Council is in an uproar," they announced, their voice modulator now calibrated for emotional expression. 17 subjugated species have already demanded reassessment of their status. "The Empire won't fall," Amanda said, noting their concern. "It's evolving, just like your ancestors hoped it would." Crix 389 moved to the window, their movements already showing more fluidity than before. "We found more hidden tests in our ancient archives. Puzzles, challenges, art pieces, all designed to be impossible for enhanced beings to solve. Our ancestors left us a trail of breadcrumbs, hoping we'd eventually understand what we'd lost. And now we rebuild. Not as masters of the galaxy, but as students." They turned to face her. "The Council of New Motion requests Earth's help in understanding the balance between enhancement and natural development. We offer an alliance of equals." Amanda considered the request. "And the other species, the ones your empire subjugated, will be given the same choice. We cannot undo 50,000 years of history in a day, but we can begin walking a new path. Together." Through the window, They watched as a group of Miraxian scientists worked with representatives from formerly subjugated worlds, sharing knowledge that had been hoarded for millennia. The crystalline ships that had once inspired fear now sparkled with possibility. "Your hand did more than shatter our arrogance," Crix 389 said softly. "It reminded us that perfection isn't about eliminating variation, it's about embracing it. Each fingerprint unique, each movement a new discovery." Amanda flexed her fingers, remembering the song of the resonance core. "Your ancestors understood something profound about evolution. It's not just about becoming stronger or faster. It's about maintaining the ability to change, to adapt, to create new possibilities. Which is why we need your help." Crix 389's optical sensors dimmed in what she now recognized as humility. Not to become more like humans, but to remember how to be ourselves again. As if in response, the resonance core, now displayed prominently in the ship's central chamber, began to sing. Its harmonics carried through the hull, touching enhanced and organic beings alike with its message of balance and possibility. Dr. Rodriguez's hologram flickered with an incoming update. "Amanda, you should know. The enhancement loyalists just surrendered. Zix 891 has requested dancing lessons." The laughter that filled the room was both human and mechanical, organic and enhanced, but most importantly, it was real. Above them, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating the birth of something new. An empire not of force or fear, but of harmony between the created and the evolved, the enhanced and the natural, the perfect and the perfectly imperfect. And somewhere in the depths of space, perhaps the ancient Miraxians who had designed that final impossible test smiled, knowing their descendants had finally remembered how to grow.